Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome back to the From the Bench series. My name is Sarah Songer, and I'm a program and studio manager at San Francisco Center for the Book. We took a break over the holidays, and we're refreshed and excited to be back with the first guest of the year. Kathy Aoki is the chief curator at the Museum of Historical Makeovers. Kathy earned her advanced degree in intensive curatorial and beauty practices at the famous ICP program at Princeton University's Toronto Annex, with her groundbreaking dissertation on the rotation and flip theory on eyelash curl found in portraiture of the late 18th century. She became acting curator at the Museum of Historical Makeovers, aka MoMA, 9 years ago in 2266 CE, when the former curator, Dr. Brooke Shieldston, stepped down due to complication from varicose vein surgery. Following her exceptional curatorial achievement in the blockbuster show, the Gwen Stefani Grand Burial Exhibition, Aoki became the chief curator of MoMA in 2272 CE. Since then, she has prepared numerous cute and beauty-related exhibitions, including shows on bleaching and waxing, Disney princess fashion for adults, and Hello Kitty Monument. Please welcome curator Kathy Aoki from the Museum of Historical Makeovers.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction. My name is Kathy Aoki, and I am indeed the chief curator at the Museum of Historical Makeovers, and it's really an honor for me to be here today and tell you about my museum. Allow me to share my screen. Can everybody see that? So, my museum, if you haven't heard of it, the Museum of Historical Makeovers, focuses specifically on cute and beauty in history, as well as all aspects of appearance and the subtext that's connected to those issues. And for example, I have this image of lower back tattooing. This is a French illustration from the late 1800s. This is an epilation scene, which means hair removal. This piece is called the Brazilian, and it's actually the piece that Thomas Eakins based his famous Gross Clinic on. And these are some canopic jars by commissioned by Gwen Stefani that were part of the Gwen Stefani Grand Burial Exhibition. She was a popular pop diva and beauty icon in the early 21st, okay, like I'm gonna discombobulate a little bit. It's so far back in time, but around 2009 was when she reigned the pop empire. So an example of one of the exhibitions that we've done that kind of tells you really about our beauty mission here is this image is from an exhibition that was in 2275 called Plucked Once, Twice Shaved. And since Sarah was kind enough to introduce my biography with really one of my favorite shows that I've ever done, the Gwen Stefani Grand Burial Exhibition, I would like to tell you a little bit about this exhibition. So it featured artifacts from the Gwen Stefani mortuary temple. And you can see from this sarcophagus that we have here, she had an Egyptian style, her artisans work in this style. And so if this is all new information to you, Gwen Stefani was a pop diva icon in the early 2000s and also reigned the pop empire from the period 2009 to 2061. So you can see from this timeline, I'm starting here with the king in 1956. And so we're, a few hundred years ago. And then in 2009, there was the mysterious death of the king of pop. And that marks the beginning of Stefani's reign during the period known as the Tragic Kingdom. So the Egyptian style burial, you're still probably wondering, she was called Pharaoh of the pop empire. And she really borrowed heavily culturally from the burial practices of the Egyptians for two reasons. One was the Bengal song Walk Like an Egyptian, which was one of her favorite tunes. This is an image of the Bengals from 1984. And also she saw a King Tut exhibition in what was formerly Los Angeles, which, as you know, because of global warming has been since covered over with water. But there was an exhibition on King Tut, and that inspired her to commission her artisans to create a mortuary temple in an Egyptian style. Now, when Los Angeles was subsequently covered over because of global warming and kind of became, a lost city of Atlantis, but Los Angeles, her tomb was lost to history until and as an anthropology student who was also a surfer, was surfing in the shallow waters and discovered these columns. And what she noticed was on the columns was the back-to-back double G symbol used by Stefani during her reign. So you can see those here on the post. So she reported this to her dissertation advisor, and then immediately excavations occurred. I had a chance to go visit the site. This is me on the right. Actually, we're looking for the secret door we heard there was a secret door into the mortuary temple, but unfortunately we were unsuccessful in finding it. But a lot of artifacts were brought back, and my museum, the Museum of Historical Makeovers, was able to give the first presentation of these pieces. So you can see in front, it's a stone tablet. That one told the story of how one of the Harajuku girl backup dancers joined Gwen's entourage. And you can see here the installation. This is from 2271 at the museum. We have a map. You can see that's the waters covering over Los Angeles and tells you the depths, and that marks where different things were found. We, of course, had the G4 sarcophagus. And again, you can see the back-to-back double G symbol on the staff that she's holding. And then we showed the canopic jars that rather than, we know from ancient email text that Gwen did not really like the idea of canopic jars, which usually hold organs. So instead, these just hold kind of like photographs and paper memories of her time with the band, no doubt. Another key piece in my exhibition, like really, I'm so proud of this, is this piece, which is the Chia Gavin. As you know, Gwen Stefani was interested in reducing her carbon footprint. And so it makes total sense that she would have a chia pet in the afterlife on which she could grow sprouts. Now, this one is especially rare, and we were so pleased to show it because Gavin Rossdale this is an image of Gavin Rossdale, her former husband, and they had split up. And as you know, when pharaohs come and go, or someone is disfavored, then they're erased from history. So this Chia Gavin had been smashed and was found in an ancient dumpster. And our experts really reassembled it. So that's how you can see it here today in this image. So that was all part of the Gwen Stefani Grand Burial Exhibition. Another show I wanted to highlight for you is our historical presentation of Hello Kitty Monument. So you may be aware that Hello Kitty Monument has really taken over the global economy. And in that same time period, which is really my favorite time period to study, is the years like 2000, 2100. Those are my favorite years of study. This Hello Kitty Monument show talks about what has long been since destroyed. It was a monument created by this person, Tarek Felsick, who was an animator at Cartoon Network. And he worked on they're so ancient, this show called Space Ghost, and also on kind of a revised update of a show called Scooby-Doo. And there is a character here that Tarek was fascinated with, Velma Dinkley. And so she solved a lot of the mysteries in these cartoons. And so Tarek had a love for Hello Kitty and this character, Velma Dinkley. And so in his late 1990s website, which we have an archival copy of here, you can see that he posted an image where he blended Velma Dinkley together with Hello Kitty and posted it online. And that was pretty much his downfall as a career as an animator. People hated on him in all kinds of chat rooms. How dare you sully like the image of Hello Kitty? And they had several reasons why they hated his blended image. One was the fact that Velma Dinkley had glasses on that kind of hinted at like a higher level intelligence, where Hello Kitty is permanently attending the second grade. And so they disagreed with that part. This character also has a mouth. Hello Kitty has no mouth, and so Hello Kitty fans were upset that this took away her naivete. Although there were some instances where Hello Kitty was an animated cartoon character and did speak, but in general, all of the merchandise that has since taken over the world of Hello Kitty, that Hello Kitty does not have a mouth, so that was in conflict with the hardcore fan base. And then lastly, there's a single line here which indicates a little bit of maturity. And as I mentioned before, Hello Kitty is permanently in the second grade. She's 5 apples tall. Hello Kitty fans were like, what is this? We can't accept that. So because of this, consequently, Turek Felsic lost his job at Cartoon Network and was just shooed by the entire animation and illustration community. It's also known as Dinkley Gate. And so he had to take a retreat from civilization and went on a kind of like a free-for-all kind of hiking trip in the Yukon Territory of Canada. And it was during this time alone in the woods that he had a vision of creating Hello Kitty monument and quickly sketched it on this napkin, which we've actually displayed at the museum. There's our like historical coffee and we believe like breakfast stains, like right after that moment when he realized I'm going to build this monument on the right. And so he did so, and it became completely famous. Famous people visited the monument, protesters came to the monument, and it was around for several years until it was torn down by Elon Musk. And so the monument doesn't exist anymore. So to kind of explore this rich history of Hello Kitty monument at my museum, we displayed images such as this tin type, which is created by Carrie Orvik. She was a San Francisco-based artist who came to the residency program at Hello Kitty Monument when it was still around. We have shown the actual napkin where Turek Felsic drew the original sketch. This is actually salvaged. I'm sorry, what's the granite from the actual Hello Kitty monument. So Elon Musk tore down the monument because the granite contained elements such as europium, which are used for quantum computing and data transfer. And so this is amazing that we've been able to save these few pieces. What you're looking at is actually the hollow of Hello Kitty's left eye. So if you imagine Hello Kitty's face on the monument, here, let me show you again here. We're looking at this kind of indentation on the mountain that we were able to save these pieces. And so these have been on display. I've also commissioned for the museum a diorama where visitors could stand in front and imagine themselves visiting Hello Kitty Monument as it was in 2007 before it was torn down. And it was also a selfie spot. So that was another aspect of that the museum was able to provide for that experience. So not just history, but kind of imagining yourself as part of that history. The last show I'd like to tell you about today is a show that's coming up in 2282. This show is going to be about a place called Koons Ruins. And so you're looking at an image of Koons Ruins now. There's very few photographs of this place. And what is Koons Ruins? I'm not sure if you can see it down here in the lower left. I'll highlight it in a moment. There's like a shiny balloon dog buried here in the front hole of this image. So let me tell you the history of Koons Ruins and why it's important to explore that through like museum and interpretive panels. So there are two characters involved. One is Dorothea James. She was an artist who grew up in Hungary, became an art collector, and worked in finance. Jeff Koons on the right was a pop kitsch artist who created works that were most often than not copies of things that already existed and then rendered kind of shiny and happy and then sold for millions of dollars. So there is a complete conflict between, well, at least in Dorothea's mind, between what art should be and should be valued and what Jeff Koons was offering the community. So what happens is this story of destruction. And so let me tell you about that. Dorothea James was born into post-World War II communist Hungary, and where art supplies were rare, but still she studied art and created works like these, sophisticated minimalist sculptures. She studied at the Art Academy in Budapest. However, she did have a backup plan as suggested by her brother, which was to go into finance, especially corporate finance. And so she did that. And so she turned to then collections. And so when we think about Dorothea's favorite artists, who are basically the opposite of Jeff Koons in her mind, and we're thinking about artists like Louise Bourgeois, Paula Rigo, Connor. This is an installation by Sarah I want to say her name correctly. And so here's Dorothea in front of these pieces that she collected and actually put into her gallery. And also she was fascinated by the works of Jenny Saville and the disparities in art market pricing between women artists of the time and Jeff Koons. So this piece called Propped, which looks like it's missing a D there in my write-up, sold for $12.4 million. And at the time that was an enormous amount of money for a living female artist. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what Jeff Koons' artwork was selling for at the same time. So Jeff Koons, on the other hand, was not born into post-World War II communist European country. He grew up in Pennsylvania in a town called York, which was known for its fair. He was born into a family that valued social mobility, and he went to art school. This is one of his early paintings. At this point, he thought, maybe I won't actually make the paintings myself. Maybe I will rearrange objects that already exist. And so this is one of his early pieces from 1979. This is not made out of stainless steel. It's actually just inflatable objects in front of mirrors set up. And so this was one of his early pieces. It did lead to this piece, The Rabbit. This rabbit sold during his lifetime for $91 million. So you can see that's a huge difference between the 12.4 million for Jenny Saville's work and Jeff Koons' work. But it was pieces like these. This one is called Amore, which is kind of like a cast creation made out of kitsch objects that were found, that Jeff worked with fabrication artists to actually do the work. And and then pieces like this, which are just Dorothea found extremely offensive. This piece is called Woman in Bathtub. So the idea, so there's supposed to be a snorkeler, like figure popping up in this woman's bathtub, and she's grabbing herself. The sculpture's actually like cut off, like her top of her head is missing. And what's Dorothea took umbrage from particularly, well, was so offended because Jeff Koons didn't even think of this idea. This is a three-dimensional sculpture. It was stolen from a postcard that he saw. So he didn't actually come up with this idea either, but turned it into a three-dimensional. And then these kind of shiny objects, he made in the late 80s what's basically a sex tape for artists, where he created a series of work with many of which were pornographic, with a porn star named Cicciolina, who was a professional. So originally she was hired to work with him on these photo shoots, and then they actually became married, during or right after the shoots. And then this is a billboard that was hosted by the Whitney Museum at the time. And then like a self-aggrandizing sculpture such as this. So Jeff Koons actually didn't make the sculpture again. He would have artists fabricate these pieces for him. So this is just building up disgust in Dorothea's mind. And there were also lawsuits. Like he wasn't sued for the bathtub one, or like at any point in history, but I guess that still could happen with the descendants of the people that originally made the postcard. But for this is an example of a lawsuit. Jeff Koons commissioned this piece by his artist and then said, this is a piece by me called Puppies. It's completely taken from this postcard, and he lost this and several other lawsuits during his lifetime for just appropriating images straight up and then using them in his work. So Dorothea cracks at like 2000 and 2018 and said, I've had enough. We know in 2012, she made this etching herself, with her art experience, that shows a balloon dog that's like kind of rotting. And so this is kind of like a telltale sign of what's coming next. And what she does is she uses the grounds of her estate to save the world from Jeff Koons' art. So this is, again, one of the early photos. And if you look here in the lower left corner, you can see like the top of a balloon dog. This actually wasn't its final resting place. Dorothea purchased Jeff Koons' art, sequestered it onto her estate, and then subjected it to accelerated degradation. She did this with several methods. I have a bunch of acids that were used on the estate. So like sulfamic, hydrofluoride, dodecylbenzene sulfonic acid in the lower right corner, phosphoric acid. She used a hammer to destroy the work. So if we look at this time chart here, you can see they were born around the same time, 1957, 1955. And then here in 2008 is when the period of destruction happens, and she just buys work and destroys it on her estate until she dies. Jeff Koons does precede her in death by a few years. When she passes away, a nonprofit foundation called the Save the Public Eye takes over the estate and opens it to the public as informally Koons Ruins. And so you can see this is the layout of the estate. People could visit this. No cameras were allowed because Dorothea had stipulated that no one could take photos of his work to glorify his history of Jeff Koons. So there's no photos available after that point in time. But we did put together a show, and it's going to open up soon, just in a couple of years here, where we're going to bring together a lot of artifacts so that you can get the experience of visiting Koons Ruins on your own. So for example, this is a porcelain shard that was a remains of this blue balloon dog, limited edition of about 399. Based, of course, on this larger balloon dog, but made out of porcelain and sold for between like $25,000 and $50,000. So someone had given Dorothea one of these, and because they thought she was obsessed with Jeff Koons in a good way, but it was the opposite. So she immediately smashed it with a hammer, and that's the only evidence they found of that piece on the grounds. Jeff Koons was also commissioned to make an art car by BMW. So Dorothy actually purchased 2 of these cars and had them on the estate. Her team of chemists and also installers had asked, do you want to stick them in the ground in the same way as the Cadillac Ranch project in Texas? And, you know, should we take our time and put the angle? And she said, no, just strip that car and just get it in the ground as quickly as possible. So this is an artist's rendering of the BMW stuck in the ground by an artist who visited Koons Ruins as an artist in resident. If you visit our exhibition in a few years, you'll be able to see this piece called Lobster, which is made out of stainless steel. Here he is next to the work. It's been put into the dirt and tested on with these various acids in the private lab that Dorothea had on her estate to test which is the most successful. And so we will have an installation where you can look through a peephole and actually see what it would be like to visit Koons Ruins and experience it. Now, you might be concerned about the environment and all the acids. It does say like acid keep out, but there's actually a ceramic protected bowl like in the dirt around the piece. So all the experiments are trapped within there and are not being leached out into the environment. We'll also have the photo stand that was used at Koons Ruins for many years, now retired, so you can come and put your face in and it looks like you are bearing Jeff Koons' work. So I really look forward to seeing you at the museum in the future, and thank you so much for learning more about my museum.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It's been a pleasure to learn about the museum and your work over the last many years. It's incredible what you've done as a curator in such a short time. So now we have a few minutes left where we can welcome Kathy Aoki, who earned her MFA in printmaking at Washington University in St. Louis. Her media repertoire has since expanded to include sculpture, installation, and performance. Her works on paper are in permanent collections across the US, including the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. Past fellowship awards include MacDowell, the Headland Center for the Arts, Frans Mazereel Centrum in Belgium, and most recently the Lucas Artist in Residence program at Montalvo. She also has a piece in the current show at SFCB, a Radical Alteration Women's Studio Workshop as a Sustainable Model for Art Making. That book is called How I Lost My Vegetarianism. So now we're going to hear from Kathy, and Kathy took up some time, but we've got enough. It's okay if we go over. If anyone needs to leave, they can just watch the video.
Yeah, thank you for your patience.
I think you've got to drop. You got to dump previous Kathy's. There we go. We were seeing her slideshow.
Okay. Yes, we are, because it's connected. So. Okay, let me try one more time. Okay, so thank you so much. The presentation I just gave is part of my practice, which I didn't know was going to happen because I started making fake museum work and I thought I have to present it as if I'm the curator. So it's something that I wasn't anticipating. I don't really actually enjoy it. It's hard for me to be a performer, but because I make these fake museum pieces, I feel like I'm the one that knows the story the best. So I give it to you that way. My history is as a printmaker. This is a kind of a terribly misregistered print I made in graduate school called Look Ma, I'm in graduate school, a linoleum cut, which was my favorite medium when I started out. So these are pieces, my thesis was on men housekeeping. And when I got my degree at Washington University in St. Louis in printmaking. The piece that I have in the show right now at SFCB is called How I Lost My Vegetarianism. And it's a piece where I interviewed about 14, there's 14 stories in there about women who either lost their vegetarianism or came pretty close to losing it. And they're humorous texts, hand carved. So that really helped with the editing to cut as much words out as possible for what I had to carve. I've also done a series of the media controlling girls by forcing them to all look the same as teddy bears and wear sexy outfits, which culminated in one of the first like kind of non-printmaking type pieces I made, which is a painted wall installation of a battle between the media girls and the innocent girls, like fighting for basically their identity. So this piece was on display at the Day Museum, which is where I teach, but also at a gallery in Los Angeles and some places in San Francisco. The big change to the museum work came in 2009 when I made this piece called The Brazilian, which is like a Brazilian waxing piece based on Thomas Eakins' Gross Clinic painting. And in the piece, the woman is getting a Brazilian, which is a beauty procedure where you remove all the hair from the private areas. And so in the original painting, Thomas Eakins is supposed to be saving the leg of a young man. I've turned this into like the husband here on the left, like can't believe that, oh, Brazilian like waxing is so terrible. It's a very serious operation. And that's when I realized like I'm making like ridiculous fake museum work. And so I installed it in that same way. So I often have like frou-frou gold frames and like brass plaques, didactic panels around the work so that it's presented as if it's real. There's often humorous voiceover, like you can, guide by cell kind of experience as well. And it expanded my practice because I had to just make a bunch of museum work. Like, oh, I guess I need to make like some canopic jars. So then I had to like do ceramics in order to do that. I made a few peephole installations in my life. So these are miniature versions, but when you look through the peephole, they appear as like 30-foot rooms. So this is supposed to be part of Gwen Stefani's burial exhibition that's closed. And that's why you'd have to look through the peephole and that's all you get to see. And like they're still working on it and there's paint and stuff lying around. Whenever I can, I still do drawing and painting. So this is a series of mascara forests, which of course fits easily into my Museum of Historical Makeovers. And then the idea is that this black slick on the left side represents the dark side of mascara and the development and the testing. And so here are some intaglio prints I made with watercolor that have these makeup as part of like a dominated landscape. And then when I did the Hello Kitty monument work, I made the 3-dimensional object that was a tabletop object here. And I worked with Carrie Orvik to take tin types of it. So we like collaborated together to take this image. So it is a tin type and it is of a real thing, but it's actually a small thing. And similarly, I was trying to like channel my inner Ansel Adams to try to take some like very deep photos here. So I would take my model outside, like in the sun, and try to, and hang branches and try to get like that depth. And then I also made a video project about a protester because it seemed like I was just straight up celebrating Hello Kitty for the show and I needed to have a counterpoint to it. So I did have a protester who said like, why are we, giving so much of our life away to this brand? And why can't we speak out? Why do we have to not have a mouth? So I made a video piece about that. Here I am giving like kind of a fake curator talk. This was at the Berkeley Arts Center, a solo exhibition in 2016. And then I like developed like logo, like I have to do everything. I have to develop the logos. I have to develop the signage. I have to like write the scripts. It's just really like made my practice very robust. So this was a room-sized diorama in San Jose. And then I had a residency at Recology in San Francisco, which is the dump. So I didn't know what was going to come through. And so I did make a series of like patriarchal monuments that were disgraced. And then when I gave my presentation, I said that they were found at the dump because patriarchy is dead. And so, of course, you can't have these embarrassing monuments around. So this is a mansplaining monument. So just this head up here was what I found. And then I made all of this out of foam that I found and signage board that I carved into and construction kind of adhesive that I use as a coating. And I made an installation. So this piece on the left was called Virilitas, which is Latin for virility. And then this sculpture says like something about always on top here on the text, always on top. So these are supposed to be disgraced patriarchal monuments. I didn't really want to make them real, so I just like stopped halfway. So they look like the theater props. Like you could see like the styrofoam in the back because I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't really make a monument like a statue to mansplaining and feel good about it. And then I've done some serious work about monuments at the same time. So this piece is an image of King Leo from Belgium, who did terrible things in the Congo. And there's a quandary with museums of what to do with these kinds of histories. Belgium is a young country. And so you can't just say like your king didn't exist. Like there's only been like whatever, 5 or 6 kings. So what do you do with these images and how do you contextualize them so that the history is not lost, but you acknowledge it? And so I couldn't solve that issue. So what I did was I just stuck them in the bushes, like kind of like sweeping under a rug, like we'll think about that later. So like I hid King Leo in the bushes, and this is a risograph print. This is an image of the Jefferson Davis statue that was in Richmond, and then I stuck it awkwardly in the ground. And I have a lot of pigeons that I try to use as social commentary. So I think there needs to be more pigeons in my life. So this is an intaglio print that I hand watercolored. And then I did make this Jeff Koons piece. I originally made a drawing in 2012 of this image. And during the pandemic, those serious monument work became so heavy that I couldn't sustain it. And I'm like, I need to take a break from these heavy, I can't, it's just, everything is too sad right now. So that's why I started the Jeff Koons work again. And so I have large digital pieces that I've made. So this one is, about 30 by 40 inches. And it's a flower piece stuck in the ground. Here is the full intaglio piece of the BMW art car. So I use the computer a lot, and then I make a photo intaglio plate out of it. And then sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, well, I think I'll just print this straight out. And so, but I'm trying to create rich environments that really are enticing to look at, but still like this is the direction you would walk on the path if you want to see a balloon dog like being destroyed in the dirt. So, and this is, you can barely see it, but the BMW art car is like right in here, like covered with vines. And I did make a photo stand, and I do have an upcoming show called that will feature this work. And so that show is going to be at West Valley College. Here's the diorama I made so that you could look through the peephole and see the lobster piece. So like that's actually how big it is. And then you would look through just a tiny peephole there. I'm working on a sculpture. It's behind me right now. I need to finish it really soon. There's going to be a big pigeon, like kind of like crouch, resting on a little chrome bump out of the ground, kind of like with poop on it and stuff. So it's going to be, it'll look like a bird on an egg, but it won't be an egg. It'll be like Jeff Koons sculpture, like all dirty and crusty and covered with like guano. And then I've also done some animation. So this is a piece I made. I made a 3D model of I made a 3D animation, and then I printed it through a risograph printing, and then you scan it back in and then layer up the images again. So I'll have several more of these animations in my upcoming show. So thank you for staying a little late. Here's the information. I would love to see you at my next exhibition, and I'm very grateful to the Center of the Book for having me here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. To quote somebody who sent in a comment, that was an extraordinary and thank you for a unique experience. So it might not have been what some of you were expecting here today, but I think Kathy did a good job of explaining her work. And I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you. We'll be back next month. Next month's guest is a queer Mexican artist living in Tijuana, and her name is Celeste Hernandez. They also have a piece in the current show, and we'll talk more with them about their work on March 7th. Registration is not open yet, but it will be soon, so keep an eye out. Thank you all for coming and being game, and thank you to Kathy, and we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.